Hi, I'm Dr. Bianca Bush, board certified psychiatrist, coach, educator, and you can think of me as your encourager as you're getting ready for your next big test. Today, I'm going to talk about how to know if someone is a hater, an op, someone that's not on your team as you're getting ready for the next step in your life, whether it's an exam, promotion, this can even apply to. But I want to share an experience with you that I had where I realized, okay, this person is not on my team. So picture this. I'm in my 20s. I'm doing a post back at the Harvard Extension School, working during the day at Boston Medical Center, working my tail off, right? That's a lot of time to get ready. And so I am trying to overcome my GPA from undergrad, right? I had a pretty bad science GPA. It was like a 2.5. Y'all, it was rough. And my overall was, I think, a 2.9. But here I am. I do have some people in my court. I believe in myself. I'm working for a fantastic mentor who believes in me in terms of, getting into medical school. And so I'm preparing. Now, I hear about this woman who is an attending a professor at a university near Boston. She's known to be someone that students of color go to for support, advice, encouragement as you are planning to get into medical school. So I'm like, yes, I think I met her. I met her at a conference. I think it was like the New England Science Symposium. I don't know if they have those anymore, but that's where I met her. And so I set up a meeting. And to be prepared for this meeting, she asks that you fill out a spreadsheet with your grades, which will calculate your GPA, give her some more information, might be some things about like, why do you want to practice medicine, that kind of thing. So I get all that together. I make arrangements with my job because, again, I'm working full time. And so I take the time off, put in for my time off because this has to happen during the weekday. I take the train. I get my train ticket. For some reason, I didn't drive, but I took the train. It was probably easier, or, yeah, it's probably just easier to do. And I also love trains. So I'm doing all this, getting ready. I'm excited. I've taken the time off. I'm getting on the train, which I love to travel by train. I'm heading up to her office, get to the campus, navigate where her office is. So excited. And so I sit down in front of her, hello, Dr. So-and-so, because she's an MD, sit down in front of her. Here she is, this esteemed attending, and here I am in my 20s, just striving, just trying to get into medical school. And one of the first things she says to me, she looks at her computer, she looks at me, and she says, well, I hope you had a good time partying. Oh my gosh, that hit me like that in my chest. And at first I'm feeling ashamed. Like, okay, she's looked at my grades and she thinks that I was just having a good old time. But then I also start to get like a little bit like, hang on. And I start to think, did she really read through all of my materials that I submitted to her? Because does she know where I went to college? I went to the University of Chicago. That's known as the place where fun goes to die. I wasn't at any kind of party school, So no, there's no way I was partying. In fact, I was fighting for my life. Are you kidding me? And so I don't even think I could really hear much of what she said after that because I was just so devastated, right? Like I already had a lot of shame about sort of my grades and my GPA from undergrad, of course, right? Already fighting that disbelief or fighting those thoughts that can I actually get into medicine, right? And so here I am with someone who is supposed to be an encourager, and she is saying, yeah, what were you doing? You weren't even giving your best. And that wasn't the case, right? So I was devastated. I think she proceeded to give me some advice about like improving my GPA and getting more serious and da 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 da. But at this point I was very serious, right? I'm working 40 hours. I'm doing the post-bac work. I'm literally either riding the number one bus. If you're from Mass or know Boston, you know it, you know what the deal is. I'm either riding the number one bus or biking up. I'm working hard to overcome these deficits, right? And so I left that meeting, devastated. I think I made it out of her office without crying. But once I got on the train back to Boston, I was in tears. I probably cried the whole way home, feeling discouraged, feeling like, okay, can I actually do this? Maybe I am a fool. I mean, it's crazy. You even start to question, like, was I partying a lot in undergrad? No, I wasn't. And so I just left feeling so discouraged. But what I want you to take from this is, where did I go back to? I went back to my workplace where I had my colleagues, my coworkers who were encouraging me on, my boss, who's my mentor, encouraging me on, right? So I went back to this warm, loving community. I went back to my postbac program where people were passionate about teaching the sciences, right? Where TAs were excited to teach. They had many office hours, places I could go ask my questions, get my problem sets done. So that's what I take away from that lesson, right? I had this person who I thought was going to be an encourager, and she wasn't. She absolutely wasn't. And I have another story about that, but I just wanted to highlight that, you might have people in your life who you think are going to be encouraging, but they're not. And it's okay to move on from them. So now I'm going to go into a few factors or a few principles when you thought you had an encourager, but you don't. And so what to look out for, signs that you might see that someone is not actually an encourager. Okay, and so I call this identifying the naysayers, the ops, your enemies, your haters, whatever it is, right? Here's some things to look out for. There can be disguised discouragement. So they may say things like, I'm just trying to be realistic, or I don't want to get your hopes up, but, this may not actually happen. Or maybe they position themselves as like wise or experienced, or like, oh yeah, I've been there. Maybe it's somebody in your life who was pre-med, right? And they're positioning themselves kind of as a know-it-all, right? They know what's supposed to happen, and they're like, yeah, well, it didn't work out for me, but maybe it can work out for you, right? So it's disguised discouragement. Another factor might be if it's sort of conditional support. They only are supporting you with like really small goals or things that they think is achievable. They're like, oh yeah, you can totally do that. But if it's something that's big and audacious, they're like, I don't know, maybe you want to aim a little bit lower. Maybe you want to make a more realistic goal, right? They're not being curious with you about how can you meet this audacious goal? How can you meet this big goal? So that's conditional support. Projection disguised as advice. Now, this might be kind of back to that first one, but this might be someone who it didn't work out for them. And they're like, yeah, it didn't work out for me, but it might work out for you. And really their stories, their narrative centers around failure and regret, as opposed to what's possible for you, the possibility for you, or even identifying success in others, right? So look out for that. This one is so good. You might feel that you have like an energy drain, or you might feel drained after those interactions. You talk to them, you tell them what your goal is. Maybe you're planning on taking the Series 7s, or maybe you're getting ready to take your LSAT after a long period of time. And you come back from that conversation with them feeling drained, discouraged, questioning, right? Like, should I do this? Because that's how I felt after I spoke with that woman. I felt like, should I actually do this? Am I on the right path? Like, maybe I should just give it up, right? So check in with yourself. How are you feeling after you have these conversations with these people? Are you feeling drained? Are you feeling discouraged? That just might be an op. They might be someone who moves the goalpost. No achievement is ever enough. So maybe you have taken a class, you did really well in that class. Okay, but let's see how you do now with biochem. Okay, well, now let's see how you do with this next thing or that next thing, right? It's never enough. And so you find yourself almost striving to please them, or like, okay, if I do this next thing, then they'll be impressed with me, right? So they are constantly moving the goalpost for what achievement looks like. So remember that when you identify these people, oftentimes them being a naysayer or a discourager or an op is not about you, but it may be about what they're identifying in themselves, their lack of achievement, their failure, or even their disbelief, right? Or their regret. It could be someone who has achieved what you want. Maybe they have their JD, maybe they have their RN, but they were not confident along the way. And so it's hard for them to instill confidence in others. So know that it may not be about you. It may more so be about them. But it's important for you to identify this. And let's think about why. Now let's think a little bit about the psychology of why someone might be a discourager, right? Or why someone may not encourage you along your path. It may be a fear-based self-protection. So your ambitions, your striving may activate some of their own fear, right? Wow. So it's not about you, it's about activation of fear for them. It can be fear of failure, right? Fear that they will be left behind as you achieve more, as you go forward. Maybe it's even the fear of them confronting their own unrealized dreams. Wow. So that's internal for them, right? That's not about you. It could be identity threat. If they are the person who's always more successful, they are the mentor, they are the one that has achieved. If you change who you are, if you change that aspect of your relationship that maybe now you or both have achieved, that can threaten their identity, right? If they're seen as the one who is wise, the one who gives advice, but now ultimately you might be in position to give advice, that can be threatening, right? And change who they are, how they see themselves. It can be a matter of scarcity mindset. Have you ever met someone that's like that, right? That they believe there's only one spot available, right? There's only one position for them. They might think, okay, now if you achieve that, is there room? Is there room for them? Is there room for you, right? Where we know if we are operating in a mindset of abundance, there's room for everybody. There's room for everyone. Everyone has a different something that they bring to the field, to the position, to the profession, right? So there's room for everyone. We don't have to get caught up in there being only space for one person. They may have some unprocessed disappointment, right? Again, this is the person who was pre-law, but they never ended up taking the LSAT. They never ended up getting into law school. Maybe they did take the LSAT, but they didn't get into law school. Or maybe they didn't match if it's a matter of residency and they had to soap for another position, right? Maybe it's about their disappointment with what hasn't been achieved in their life, right? So all of these things we can think about, and we can have compassion towards the folks who are discouragers and who are not helpful in our lives. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to allow them to continue to take up space, the very important space where we need someone who's going to encourage us on in our goals. But that just means that we recognize it, and we might limit the time that they spend with us or we spend with them. Okay, so here are 3 tips for you if you are feeling like this is someone in your life. All right, tip number 1, you're going to identify what's going on and you're going to name it, but you're not going to argue it, right? Does that make sense? So you're going to see what's going on, you're going to identify it, and you're not going to argue it with them. You're not going to say, hey, you're a discourager in my life, but you're going to say to yourself, ooh, this person is not safe to share my visions with. And so just remember, not everyone needs or gets to have a front seat to your dreams, right? So acknowledge it, say to yourself what's going on, and say to yourself, okay, this is not someone who I'm going to be sharing my dreams with, or even my insecurities or my uncertainties. I'll keep that for another person. Oh, this one is good. Tip number 2, separate data from opinion. Okay. So, there was one thing about that woman that I went to see, right? She's looking at the data and she's saying, okay, this is probably next to impossible for this young person, this young woman to get into medical school. Okay, that's legit. That's legit. But the opinion was that I was partying the whole time, right? So you want to be able to separate the two, because you could potentially get some valuable information from these people. Are they saying, okay, we know that X, Y, or Z needs to happen, right? Maybe you're going through your Q banks and you're getting 50%. Well, we know that probably should be around the 70s or 80s to be able to do well on the test. It's something like that, right? So that is pretty factual, but it's more of the opinion where it's like, okay, where's the data behind that? Okay, yeah, it's not likely you're going to get in. Okay, where's the data? How many people do you know that actually have not gotten in? Is it a 100% certainty that I'm not going to get into law school, medical school, whatever the case is, residency, fellowship? Is it a 100%, or is this just what you think, right? So let's separate the data from the opinion. So that might mean that it's on you to actually get the data, right? See if you can find some stories that are like yours. See if you can find, okay, what do I actually need to get into these programs, right? That was tip number 2. Tip number 3, Ooh, I love this one. Tip number 3, curate your environment ruthlessly. Make sure the people that you have in your area, your circle, are rooting for you. And I'm going to talk about who those people are in my next video. How do you create that community? But the point is that you need to do it with intention, okay? You need to make sure there are people around you who, when you're getting discouraged, will encourage you on. So you need to actively seek voices that normalize growth, that speak possibility without fantasy, right? It's grounded or rooted in some reality, and they reflect back your competence or even your dream, your vision, your passion. So you might find these in mentors, online communities, family members. Again, I'm going to go into detail about where you can find this in my next video, but it's important that you curate it. You need it. Think about this. Belief is contagious, so choose wisely. Belief is contagious. So that means that people are believing in your possibilities. That's contagious. If people don't believe in your possibilities, that's also contagious, right? So we want to be intentional with that choice. All right, so I'm going to close with this. I hope you have learned some things from this video. I hope you're encouraged even by hearing a little bit of my story about what's possible, right? But know that as you're going along in your journey, regardless of whether you're an undergrad, medical student, resident, fellow, pre-law, law school student, right? Nursing student, wherever you are along your journey, it's possible that you might have some folks that aren't in your court. And that doesn't mean that you have to like totally cut them off 100%. Perhaps they're valuable for other spaces in your life. But when it comes to pursuing your dreams, getting ready for that big test, you want to have people who are cheering you on. So I hope this is helpful. This is just one aspect or one thing that I think about in my book, Test Anxiety No More, and my course, Test Anxiety No More, which is helping you combat test anxiety so you can reach your dreams. Check it out below. I have links if you're interested in taking it, getting more of a robust preparation for your mindset, for your exam. Know that it's there. I am here. I am cheering you on. I may not know you personally, but you can come back to this video and know that I believe in you. I believe in your dreams because what you have to offer this world is unique. It's something that no one else has. So you have to keep going. All right. Make sure you like, subscribe, all of those YouTube things, and I will see you in the next video.